Good morning and welcome back to United TV. And we've got a few stories to talk about today. Laurie Whitwell has been putting out a lot of information regarding Carlos Baleba, a player that I keep saying is definitely still on Manchester United's radar. The price will be different though. I'm not going to say it's going to be a £50 million deal, but Laurie Whitwell is saying what a lot of us have been thinking for a while is that Manchester United have never really gone away from the Belieber deal. It has gone quiet. Lots of midfielders have been talked about. In the meantime, it was always about the price for Manchester United. It was always about trying to get a deal which Brighton would accept. We know that Carlos Baleba, he agreed terms at the end of last summer. He's very keen on the move. There's been a question mark over his form, a little bit of a question mark over potential injuries he's been carrying from the start of the season. But it seems that Manchester United, they might well go back to the table with Brighton with a lower offer, possibly. I don't think we're going to be seeing like 50 million. That seems to be a price that might be a bit ambitious for Manchester United. But at this point, I would be expecting Brighton, given what's happened over the season, given like they've actually got a good team as well, they might be looking at with Belieber. The player looks like he's wanting to move. Brighton, they will have the players lined up to replace Belieber. They will have people in mind they're going to buy. They might be looking at this thinking they may have hoped to get something like 100 million last summer. That's very, very unlikely considering you've got Anderson, Tonali, you've got Angela Stiller, you've got a big list of players that are potentially moving, and I don't think they can push the price up to 100 million. It doesn't seem realistic. I don't think people will be taking Belieber at that sort of price. So it might be that the valuation is going to go down a bit, but I don't know exactly where it's going to be. What will Brighton's valuation be? Brighton have missed out in the past when they've tried to put too high a price tag and then ended up not making the profit they wanted. Brighton, I think, want to realise a profit on Belieber. So I'm thinking there will be a deal done. I don't know what price it's going to be. I'd be genuinely surprised if United could get a deal for 50. Maybe 50 is a starting point. You put add-ons on top of that, or maybe the price goes up slightly with some add-ons. That could be kind of like where Manchester United start the negotiation. And maybe it's going to come down to like what the market value is at the time. That we don't really know what's going to be happening in the summer, whether we're going to see some very, very big deals happen very suddenly, because that kind of happens a lot of the time that if a midfielder moves for incredible money, it might be that Brighton are in a strong position, and it might be that Manchester United have to go, actually, right, we're going to have to pay maybe closer to Brighton's valuation at this point in time. So have a look at this and see what people are thinking regarding the story. And also, the other option that Manchester United got, just to put a benchmark in there as well, if TCHOUAMENI goes, the price is going to be approximately 70 million, possibly a bit more, but you're looking at about 70 million for a player that's played at the highest level for a number of years, was bought as Casemiro's replacement. They don't want him to leave Real Madrid, but there is links with Angela Stiller and Rodri to Real Madrid. So it's potential that Real Madrid have got a lot of top quality midfielders. So potentially that sort of deal. But I think when you start looking at it, that's what £70 million gets you. I don't think Belieber, based on like one good season and a bit of a no, not quite a good season this season. I don't think he's going to be shouldn't be in the same price category really. I think it's about finding what sort of value Brighton would accept. I think if Belieber's at a different club to Brighton, maybe a deal could have got done last summer, but there is like a track record of Brighton really trying to rinse out the best possible price. It makes it difficult to try and do deals with Brighton because once they put this very high price tag on, it's quite difficult to negotiate. Like 100 million plus was really crazy. I think that was never going to happen. If they'd have gone a little bit lower, maybe they could have got a deal done last summer. Maybe it could have been like a similar price to some of the players we bought, possibly, and maybe we would have had that deal done. I think Manchester United, though, on the whole, I think they feel probably relieved they didn't pay over 100 for Belieber. They still rate the player, but they look at it thinking actually a more sensible price, and it's a quite good deal. Yali says that I think that you think that 50 million sounds too cheap, and say shocked if United get it for that price, and say yeah, you'd have to do some serious negotiation to get that price done. I say you think the price is closer to 70 million, which I think is like I think Manchester United had a valuation of like 60-ish maybe last summer, and I don't think that was going to happen. But I think when you if you look at that, then that could be a situation. I would say 50 million you're going 50 million maximum for Jim. It might be if Manchester United do have a serious valuation of about 50 million, it's going to make it a bit difficult. It's going to be quite tricky to try and get this deal done. I don't think Brighton are going to accept 50 million. And say for 70 million, so you think there's better players than Baleba that you can get for that? I suppose if you list the players you think you can get that are better, Jim, I think that the only difference is going to be that some of the targets we're looking at will be quite difficult to get. So at the moment, if I had to say what's the probability of certain targets going to Manchester United, there's some targets that you feel are quite achievable. There's some that are going to be quite difficult. So we've had these conversations regarding Elliot Anderson, Tonali. They're both going to cost more than Baleba. They both could be quite difficult deals to do. Like Newcastle will definitely hold out for the very highest price. The Isak saga last season is going to tell you that. And it could be a difficult deal to do. If they're going to pay over six, let's say 60 for Alanga, nearly 60 for Wissa, they're going to want a lot of money for Tonali. He's a lot better football player than both those. So it could be difficult dealing with Newcastle because they don't want to sell. They just want the top price. And I think with Nottingham Forest, they actually could end up having an okay season in the end. And maybe they're going to want to keep Anderson unless they get insane sort of offers. So it could be difficult. I think if West Ham stay up, I think £70 million is kind of the price they want for Fernandes as well. So it's difficult to try and find. There's not really many bargains out there at the moment. It's quite difficult. But I think this is kind of like saying essentially, Brighton will be looking at Baleba. He is going to start devaluing if they can't sell him. Like he might well improve, but I think the midfield market is this summer. It feels like so. If you're looking at this summer, this feels like when they need to get the deal done. Good morning to you, Clive. So I hope you're good as well. So this is in line with like what we've been talking about over the last 12 months. 50 million does seem like quite a cheap deal. So when you start looking at it like that, 50 million does seem like a bargain. Or say not a bargain, but it does seem to be sensible price compared with where we were 12 months ago or like even over the summer. It does feel like it's a sensible price. Part of me actually thinks this. If you're looking at the midfield market, it is difficult to guess. And I was saying, is it going to be good for teams buying midfield players because there's loads of midfield players available, or is it going to be good for clubs selling? And I think what we might see is a little bit of a domino effect, where one of the key things to this could be if Real Madrid do agree a deal for Rodri, and they keep talking about Rodri. I don't know why, because Rodri I don't think he's the same player since the injuries. But if Real Madrid still are interested in Rodri, it might be that with Bellingham, with Camavinga, and you've got all so much top quality in that team, it might be that they're letting a player go. It might be that there's not going to be enough minutes for some of these players. So there's going to be a difficult situation. I mean, Rodri's not going to go there to just watch from the bench. He's going to go there to be in the team. And Camavinga doesn't want to play as a centre back. Sorry, yeah, Tchouaméni is not so keen on playing as a centre back. So although he is very good there, it might be that he's the one that's moved on. I think it's a bit risky. If I was a Real Madrid manager, I would be keeping Tchouaméni rather than getting Rodri. I think Rodri would be quite risky. But again, Real Madrid do have this track record of moving players on for no seemingly not necessarily a good reason, but because they want to reshape their squad a little bit. So it wouldn't be the first time Real Madrid have moved out good players and tried to maybe go in a slightly different direction. I would say surely Brighton know he's not worth 100 million. Exactly. It was going to be a deal for possibly this. I think what happened last season transfers went a bit crazy. Manchester United went to Brighton on pretty much like the last week of the transfer window. And when you try and do a deal like that, Brighton thought, I think rightly so, I think if you're in charge of Brighton and Manchester United try to buy one of your best players in the last week of the transfer window, you think that you could put a very high price. If Manchester United are prepared to pay, say, 80, 90 million euros for a Sancho, for an Anthony, 80 million pounds for Maguire, then of course you're going to put the price. Because I think most people thought, and Brighton probably thought, that Manchester United had a track record of spending that sort of money on players. Like, okay, not 100 million, but they had spent a huge amount of money on Maguire, on the other players on the list, like Sancho and Anthony. So it wasn't a stretch. I mean, it's not a stretch then. I think now Manchester United, they've kind of set their stall out. They haven't been spending the same amount of money per player. So I think it's actually shows Manchester United moving in the right direction somewhat, but also other options coming up. And say, what has this player done? Says Scott. Says say nothing except massively flop. I'd say that okay. I think one of the questions I would be very interested to know, and that's why I've said a couple of times now. I know a Brighton fan. She's very good. She's been a regular guest in the past, and I might try and get her on to find out from the Brighton perspective if there's a bit more behind the scenes we don't know about. And say when you're saying can play barely 45 minutes for Brighton, and he did get substituted quite regularly around the 60-minute mark, it seems to me that if you're going to guess what happens in football regarding certain things, and I think Rob touched on this in the comments as well, that when you're looking at some players that it looks like with Baleba, it feels like he's been managed in terms of his minutes, and it feels like for whatever reason, Brighton are trying to like he starts that he's playing every game pretty much, but it looks like Brighton want to manage his minutes, and I'm wondering whether there is something like Rob saying. I think there might be something like that behind the scenes that I'm not like maybe it's something that clearly it's not stopping him playing, and he did play very well recently against Chelsea. So there's definitely something there, which makes me think that Brighton they want to put him in the shop window, don't they? They want him to play most games, and maybe it's a bit of a risk. I just look at it and think that United need to know a little bit more. I mean, at the age he is, I hope there isn't some sort of underlying injury that he's playing through because that's probably considering like a 21-year-old playing football in the Premier League, you can't be taking those sort of chances. So yeah, Angel Beast is saying that Wilcox believes Premier League proven is one who starts many on the bench this season. So you hope for a good transfer window. Then this is probably why I think United are actually, if we had to pick what's our favourite option out of these two, then I think United, ideally, they're looking for what is going to be, what is going to fill most of the gaps that Casemiro left. And they've kind of gone almost naturally for the player that replaced Casemiro. So I think if you're going to pick one player to try and do what Casemiro did, they're looking at Tchouaméni as that option. I would say Tchouaméni. I know what Casemiro was doing at Real Madrid. I think Tchouaméni is actually more defensive. Like we're seeing with Casemiro, he is very good defensively, and he did do that very well at Madrid. But we've seen Casemiro as a lot, maybe a more attacking player, maybe more of an all-rounded midfielder player than we thought of a few years ago. And you can see that Casemiro, he's got a great passing forwards, like nice line breaking passes, very good link up with forward players, very good understanding attacking set pieces as well. Incredible in the air. And I think maybe Casemiro's might be one of the probably the highest scoring defensive midfielder in the Premier League at the moment. He does have a great ability at finishing chances. I think that's something that United are missing. But I think one of the things United are looking at is that Baleba would be a good option if you get the price right. But you would also be looking at can we get some more experience in the team? I think Tchouaméni is one of those players that would bring a crazy amount of experience when you think about it. But I do think there's also like Real Madrid don't seem to want to don't seem to want to do that either. But no, I think it's right to be skeptical because at the moment that we don't know whether Belieber has got an injury and we're not sure whether that there's a reason why he's not playing that well or playing that many minutes. So if you've got to do the deal, so yeah, YouTube, according to like some things I saw this morning, YouTube sends out notifications to maybe 5 to 10% of people that are subscribed. But if you want to join the Discord group, we will post in there every day, and the Facebook group as well. We will post in there every time we're doing a stream. So a couple of comments on like Belieber is if you're going to get Belieber deal, you've got to be thorough with the medical. You've got to make sure you've got to make sure 100% that there's nothing wrong there. And if there is, then maybe walk away or push the price right down. That's probably what I'm thinking regarding this one. It's something you've got to look at for sure. I think the good thing is when we were talking about Belieber in the summer, we were talking about only Belieber, and the option was try and get Belieber. If we didn't get Belieber, we tried to loan Conor Gallagher, that was essentially Manchester United's only option. Now we're looking at Baleba as maybe like for people's like their fourth or fifth choice in terms of like midfield players available. So it's kind of like the power I think is a bit more in Manchester United's hands. I don't think we're kind of forced to meet Brighton's valuation because we've got lots of other options. There was which weren't on the table a year ago. And so Kate says, I think once you start to look past Tonali, Anderson, Wharton, and Tchouaméni, there's a drop off in quality, and I'd like to get at least one of those four in. Which that's a good one actually. If you that I would say you got to make a good point there. So Anderson, I was trying to think what are the most expensive options. Anderson and Tonali almost certainly up there. Tchouaméni, Adam Wharton, I guess also I think this is one where I think some people really rate Adam Wharton, some people are not quite so keen, but he would be possibly available for about 60 to 65 million. So if you're looking at 60 to 65 million for Adam Wharton, then I think that means that believers should not be costing that sort of amount. So that's going to be probably, I think probably this kind of price limit. Like I don't think you can charge over 60 for, well, you can try and charge over 60, but then Manchester United could quite easily go, right, Angela Still is available for maybe closer to 50. Gomez is available for less. Potentially Fernandez is available for 34, etc. If you're doing that one, it's difficult. Well, cheers, Agile. I know it's very early where you are, but we'll be live in at 1 p.m. as well to discuss some other news I've been seeing. No, I think that's very good. Said say you even wanted Mbeumo to convince Baleba to come to us. There was a lot of momentum last season, and I thought that to be honest, Baleba wanted to join Manchester United. So Baleba wanted to join Manchester United. It was a factor. It's interesting, isn't it, that when you're looking at the momentum Manchester United have got, it's that the players joining United at the moment do want to join Manchester United. It wasn't a problem that we finished 15th last season. It will certainly not be a problem if we finish third in the Premier League and get Champions League football. I think we're looking at certainly a lot of players looking at United. Like Tchouaméni is not a consideration last season, is he? And I think what we're looking at here is when we finish 15th, Baleba would join Manchester United. When we finish 15th, Tchouaméni will not join Manchester United. Uh, the other players we're talking about as well, they're not jumping to Manchester United when Manchester United's 15th. They're looking for a move next season. Adam Wharton was never going to move last season. He was always going to move this summer. And I think some of the things regarding Anderson, he was never going to be moving last summer. He was going to be a transfer for this summer as well. And Tonali wasn't available last summer either. I mean, he's still going to cost a lot. So there wasn't the deals to be done last summer. And that's why I think Brighton if Brighton wanted to get 70 million, I think they could have maybe got that last summer. I think they might struggle to try and get that sort of price this time because 70 million pounds does get you too many. Um, so is too many. So, oh, that's a question for someone in the chat. Is too many your favourite one? So, I would say it's an interesting one, isn't it? So, So his point is we can't afford to wait 4 years for a player to develop. We need them to be ready. Honestly, that seems to be Manchester United's approach as well, and Manchester United's level of thinking. Then when we're looking at midfielders, then people are saying that Anderson doesn't really need time to develop at 23 years old, playing international football, playing European football with Forest, playing like one of the best players in the midfield at the moment in the Premier League. So Anderson, you could argue that he's got years of Premier League experience behind him. Tonali, top international experience as well, playing Champions League football with Newcastle. Newcastle did very well. Don't forget, in the Champions League, Newcastle should have beaten Paris Saint-Germain. And you're looking at the midfield that Paris Saint-Germain have got, it's incredible. So Newcastle United in European football did do very well this season. Tonali playing a big part in that as well. And I think that United will be looking for a player that is ready now. That's almost certainly. That's why they're looking at some of these big range of targets. That's why they're looking at some Real Madrid players that are Champions League experienced, that do have the experience of playing at the highest level for multiple years. They are looking at those players. Those are the players that are going to cost the big money, aren't they? So when you're looking at that level of experience, that's going to cost a lot. We paid 60 for Casemiro, was it like 4 years ago or whenever it was? And if we're going to get too many, I would be surprised if too many 70 million based on like I think he cost at least what was it 80 million euros when they bought him. So I don't think I don't think that too many would be that expensive as long as like there's no injury issues, which I don't believe there is too much. So a few links to Edison. I think Edison's going to be one of those options that he was pushed towards Manchester United by agents and by Atalanta almost like about a year ago, and the story was going to be that he was, I think, on the radar for Manchester United and Manchester City, and no, there's definitely going to be a situation where he agreed terms with Atletico Madrid. Atletico Madrid don't want to pay the valuation, I believe. I think that is the situation that the move from Atalanta to Atletico Madrid is not going particularly smoothly for Edison. So Edison could be available. I'm not sure the price, if anyone's got an idea, but I think the price was possibly like 35 to 40 million. It was something that was going to be 50 million a year ago. I think Atalanta are quite keen to move the player on to get the money. I believe Edison was apparently quite keen on playing in the Premier League, although I think he's at 26 now. So he would bring experience, and maybe it's not seen as the level of experience of other players we're looking at, but it is going to be. It's one that I think was interesting, say a year ago, 18 months ago. I'm not sure Manchester United would be. I think United now, if you're going to go for a player that's not Premier League, I would say too many too many and Angela Stiller have got to be like way above like all the other options at the moment. But it's at the moment there's a lot of things to consider. I would say so in terms of what type of kind of midfielder do we need, and say if you're looking like a complete CDM or you're looking at something a bit more balanced, I think one thing that it depends on is if you're looking at someone playing alongside Kobe Mainu, what sort of players do you want alongside Mainu? If you want someone that's going to be like Casemiro in terms of like defensively excellent and someone that's going to be a ball winner, then I think if you look at actually if you look statistically then Casemiro was about, I think he's on like the 95th percentile in terms of players that win their duels, and you probably say like too many feels like one of the obvious ones. Um, but say Aurelian too many 70 million pounds. Anderson could potentially be. No, is Anderson actually going to go for a crazy price? Like there is going to be conflicting stories. Is Anderson going to be actually that sort of price that so Yanni says, I'm taking Anderson transfer news with a grain of salt. So looking at this, so if Forest knocked out the Europa League, so if Forest, yeah, if Forest win Europa League, I think they're keeping him, and I think he's staying there. That's kind of a guess, but again, it might take huge money if that happens, but they won't want to sell him. I don't know whether we're going to see this kind of situation where is Anderson actually going to be costing more than too many? It's if too many is fully fit, it seems a bit crazy, doesn't it? I would say Edison plus Tonali. I think Manchester United are actually, people are talking about saying what sort of profile do you need as a player. I think Anderson ticks all the boxes with defensive work. If you watch him live, incredible. But he also is able to get further forward, impact the game in that respect. So Tonali again, he's somebody that, according to like no, when I was talking last night with Helgi, he's a massive fan of Tonali, so he's going to be a bit more biased. But he was saying he would love to get him, thinks he's a great player, but also Tonali's kind of motivated to try and win trophies, play at the highest level. It's something that Manchester United need to try and get in as well. I think it's the experience level. You've got someone that's played international football, played Champions League football already. It's trying to replace Casemiro's experience is something Manchester United are also thinking. It's like not just like can he play in this team. It's also about if we do go for Baleba and we do go for some of the other younger players, possibly it would be good to get a little bit of like experience, like particularly like Champions League experience and international experience. And Bruno in the chat says, don't pay even say $1 more than 50 million as of right now, he's a £50 million player at best. I think it's like a fair valuation. If you consider how has he played this season, and look at the other midfield options, has Baleba played better than Anderson? Like, almost certainly no. Has he been playing better than Wharton? And so we played against Crystal Palace, and Wharton was no, they scored a goal because of like a great pass by Wharton that led to a penalty. And so Wharton's always impacting games when we're playing against Crystal Palace. I believe it was pretty quiet when we played Brighton the first time, quite a big win for us. But again, I suppose they did knock us out of the FA Cup. But no, if you look at it, if you compare him midfielder to midfielder this season, then Belieber hasn't had the best season. Whether you think that's just a one-off, the fact remains is that Manchester United actually have better options. So whether you think that it's a one-off and there's other reasons, United don't need to worry about that. They've got other options to choose from. And if West Ham get relegated and Fernandes is available for about 34 million, I think that that's another midfield player that could jump ahead in the queue. And it could be that potentially there's a battle with PSG, as we talked last night. Like, he is on their radar, but again, PSG, a little bit like Real Madrid, they've completely stacked in midfield. So maybe there's an option that maybe we see a player leave PSG, maybe we see a player leave Real Madrid. I think there could potentially be a couple of players we've not talked about that move for quite big money. So yeah, no, I think Dorga will definitely be in the mix next season for sure. I would say needing 6 to 10 players. I don't think United can actually. That 10 players is a lot, isn't it? 10 players is crazy, man. But so 6 players. I think 6 players is reasonable. I think 6 players is something you could get go for. And so players that can United afford to spend most of the summer pursuing Anderson, or should United acquire say too many or Tonali? So too many plus Tonali would be. I mean, that would be an incredible statement signing, wouldn't it? It would be an incredible statement signing. But a lot with the too many situation is, I believe Real Madrid are offering a new contract to Tchouaméni. They want him to stay, but Manchester United are monitoring the situation. It could be that too many wants to leave Real Madrid, and maybe that there has been like stories that apart from the football side of it, that some of the players are a bit dissatisfied, and sometimes they want to have a change. It wouldn't be the first Real Madrid player that's moved to Manchester United, but I hope it's like we're getting someone at the right age. And I mean, Varane, great player. Maybe he had one of his best games in the cup final we won, but I think Varane came to us with unfortunately a bigger history of some injuries. Casemiro, probably, if we'd have signed him 4 years earlier, he would have been an exceptional player. But he was still, Casemiro has still been pretty good over the last year or last 6 months because he's still been one of the key players in our team. We just should have bought younger players, I think, and built around those. Overhead kick TV, good to see you. So I think Belieber and Too Many would be a great window, but Tonali and Too Many, now that's gold. Interestingly, I would say that surprisingly, maybe, but Tonali does divide opinion a little bit among some of the people I see watching. But yeah, it's interesting that, and say it's a minute since we're linked with Tonali. Newcastle would want crazy money. So despite all the crazy stories and all the big money news, it does seem that Manchester United do have like an idea of how much they want to pay. Whether we can do this or not, it feels a bit like we're almost consciously trying to not overpay. Like if you remember the story coming out with Barada last season saying that we have a cap for how much we want to pay for Bramo. If Brentford want more than that, we're not going to pay it. So Barada was quite bullish last summer, saying this is how much we value him, this is how much we're going to pay, and they went to Brighton as well, saying I remember people last summer, honestly, last summer when Manchester United went to Brighton and said we value him at about 60-ish million. People laughed and said, "There's no way." Like, because he had a very good season, people were saying he needs to cost a lot more. He needs to cost a lot more than the 60 million Man United are offering. And now we're going fast forward 12 months, and if we'd have spent 100 million on Belieber, I think it would be one of those deals where I mean, hopefully it would come good, but we'd be looking at it thinking, yeah, it's crazy. Evan Ferguson, 100 million pound price tag. He's got serious injury issues now. Still quite young, but probably worth a quarter of that. if you're looking at it like there's no guarantee he can actually get back to the level he was at. Um, trying to actually get Baleba, it's exactly the same as Crystal Palace turning down huge money for Mark Gahey from Newcastle and then selling him for £20 million less than a year later. So don't be. I think if you're a selling club, scouting's better. I was even talking to people yesterday or 2 days ago saying that some of the deals that used to be done by Portuguese teams to get top quality talent from South America, now we're having teams like Chelsea, Real Madrid, Barcelona, even Manchester United looking there now. So the players that used to be scouted by Portuguese and some Spanish teams to get top quality South American players a bargain. That doesn't happen anymore. Estevao, Chelsea were on it. You're looking at Conceição, Manchester United, Real Madrid, Barcelona. They're all on this deal. So even like Newcastle, they're trying to get players from South America that a bargain. I don't think you get those sort of bargains anymore. So it's going to be more difficult for Brighton to make profit because if they put a too high a price on Baleba, Manchester United just go elsewhere. There's I think some of the deals where you're looking at the deals you're looking at with players costing way over 100 million. I don't think that needs to happen. I think you've got a lot of options out there, so it's a lot more options available. I'm hoping Brighton, if Brighton realise this, then United can thrash out some sort of sensible deal at a price they agree on. Otherwise, I'd be saying like Fernandez, Angela Stiller, just look around, and there's going to be other options as well. Welcome, Gaz United to the chat. Good to see you, Gaz. Say signing too many and Tonali would mean getting two more defensive-minded players, says Cody. Then maybe that's what Manchester United are looking at. Maybe they are looking at trying to get, say, almost like two sixes. But I think I'd rather get, like we were talking last night, if you get someone that's more of an eight, someone that's a bit more dynamic, that can do a bit of both, that might be good. I would be genuinely looking at thinking if you can go for one top quality. I use the word the sort of terms world class a bit loosely because it depends on how much you rate the player. But if you can buy somebody that you would look at and say, right, he gets in most teams, a bit like Rodri a few years ago, and maybe like Kante and in his prime. I think Kante was a better example because Leicester won the Premier League title largely because of Kante. Chelsea, they dominated a couple of seasons, Champions League, Premier League title because of Kante. He was one of those players that was just unbelievable. I'm surprised he didn't go for bigger money, to be honest. And if you then go and have a look now, you got Tchouaméni, you got Tonali. I think Manchester United need one, maybe those sort of players. But again, it might depend on what Manchester United are thinking. That if those players are available, then maybe they get two of them, and maybe they look at like playing like Mainu a bit further forward. Like we have seen Mainu play further forward in the past. A nice link-up play with players early on in the season. If you look at the Arsenal win, like beating Arsenal, we saw Kobe Mainu was obviously important in that game and lovely little link-up play to lead to the third goal. So he's got that in his locker. He's a good decision maker, and I'd say maybe I don't think he's got the passing range at the moment to be more of a deep line playmaker. But I think if you push him further forward with someone like Tchouaméni behind him, could be good. But then you could also look at it, say, then Manchester United might need to buy another kind of more attack-minded midfielder. So if you're getting two defensive midfielders, I think that yeah, you need to sign three, don't you? So and then it might depend on how much money you've got. So it's going to be very, very difficult. So can one player have that big? I think if you get some players can have a massive impact, can't they? I think when Manchester United have got as many issues as we have, then how much impact can one single signing have? I would say Lamans was probably going to have the most impact of any signing we made. Just having a competent goalkeeper is a big improvement. At the moment, one elite midfield player signing would make a big difference compared with not getting that deal done. So as it stands at the moment, Casemiro has gone. So Manchester United's midfield, as it stands from the start of next season, it's just Kobe Mainu and Agate. Everybody thinks Agate is going to go, so it's almost like a clean slate for Manchester United's midfield. Kobe Mainu's just signed a new contract, so that's the first building block, and then they're looking at what can they bring in alongside him. I think Baleba was always going to be on the radar because of like his mobility, because of the he would maybe be quite a good person to have in that team. alongside Manu, but I think United have kind of moved on a lot in the last 9 months. It's surprising, isn't it, how many midfield targets we've literally been talking about, and it's probably the. I'm trying to think. Last season, it was all about strikers with Gyökeres, Sesko, Ekitike, Walter Maida. I think Arakadari we talked about as well. I mean, he joined the Premier League, and there are so many different striker decisions to be made by clubs, Isak drama. So, and this time it seems to be all about midfield. It doesn't. It seems to be weirdly that Manchester United were involved in looking at attacking players last season. Now we're looking at midfield signings, and it seems to be that's where all the noise is going. And it's probably because lots of teams are looking at this as well. Real Madrid are looking, PSG are looking, Liverpool, Manchester City, all the top teams are looking for defensive midfielders or attacking midfielders. If I could pick, if I could cherry pick one or two, I don't. I might be talking about that at 1 p.m. actually, because there's a couple of stories. And say we're looking at say £200 million spend, and then I think with £200 million would be like say three midfield players to sort out, hopefully sort out midfield as well. But beyond that, then Manchester United will be looking at we're gonna sell roughly like 200 million, let's say roughly over £100 million worth of players leaving the club. So I think that could also be factored in. United do seem to have this idea that they can somehow prioritize like left wing as like quite expensive as well. Gaz, yeah, 100%, 100%. I'm not sure which point you joined the stream, but I was saying that myself and more importantly Manchester United are looking at what sort of experience they can get, and I think that's why this is probably one where do people consider Anderson as an experienced player now? Because you'd probably say when we first started talking about him, he was considered definitely a youngster. He's only 23 still, but are people starting to look at Anderson as being actually a bit more experienced now that he's got, say, European experience with Forest, played another season in the Premier League, playing really well. Definitely in terms of Premier League experience, I think Anderson's there. I think the experience that you're talking about with Casemiro, it's a level up, isn't it? Like Casemiro is elite experience wise as well. So that too many is the only player we're linked with really that's close to Casemiro. I think maybe Tonali's the next, where you've got all the times he's played for his country, the Champions League experience, European experience. So I would say that if you're looking for experience, I think it has to be like too many's the most experienced there. Tonali, and maybe if you look at in uh, say outside the Premier League, I think Angela Stiller is like that guy that has got the experience, is rated as well, and you can see that there's no surprise that Angela Stiller's like along with Rodri is on the Real Madrid list. So that's probably what I'm thinking. That having two youngsters running midfield, I think having two youngsters in the midfield in the squad is absolutely fine. And if Manchester United are looking at getting someone like Fernandez, I think that's a good option. But again, you would be looking at saying like too many plus Fernandez would be pretty good. So it's going to be this one. Say Anderson more experienced than Baleba. Yeah, I agree. I agree. That's why I'm saying that Anderson would cost more. And when you're looking at Baleba, you've got to also look at say you've got Fernandez, Alex Scott, you've got other players that could push the price down. That's what I'm thinking as well. Just 7 subscribers to hit 600, says Cody. So if you just tuned in, then I think it'd be difficult to hit it in the stream, but we could get very close, which would be excellent as well. And also, welcome to the community if you are new. It's great to have you along. And also, don't forget, this is pretty interactive, so feel free to get some comments in, get some questions in as well. I'd say 200 million. I would look at it this way. Manchester United, say 2 years ago, we bought, I'm trying to think, we got Mazraoui, we got De Ligt, and I think we thought we were sorting out defence, but with De Ligt, we might have got a bit unlucky with the injuries. And it felt like Manchester United did a couple of deals, it's kind of like, to try and sort out the team. And they probably made a few mistakes. Xerxes, Agate probably didn't really suit, but I think we've moved on a little bit from then. I think we've got a bit of a better strategy. and last season was pretty close to £200 million on attacking players, wasn't it? If you consider the three prices with add-ons, I think with add-ons, etc., it probably is pretty close to like the £200 million mark. I think that the midfield fix is going to cost about 200 million, and it sounds like a lot, but when you consider the people we're talking about, it's bringing in some unbelievable quality. Like if we're looking at some of these players, that this would be a massive improvement over what we've seen in the last, say, few years. Like if United had Tchouaméni and Baleba, this is like different level compared with what we've been seeing in the past. We've been seeing like games this season where United have actually pushed. I think they pushed defend. Didn't they put Lissandro Martinez in midfield for one match, and we've had other kind of mistakes. I think in terms of how we set up as well. But say you think the spend's going to be closer to 350 in total. So United have got around 50 million in the bank. The Champions League money will be a massive boost as well. Also, I think if you factor in Manchester United's wage bill, it's down 50%. So I'm not saying they're going to keep it. They're not obviously the wage bill is going to go up a lot, but that's the idea that they've cut a lot of salaries that which were not great value out of the squad. Like Casemiro's salary is going to be gone. Sancho and Rashford's salary will be gone. And then last season, Eriksen was on a lot of money. They had other players leaving. Lindelof's on a decent amount of money, and the players that have come in, most of them have been on cheaper contracts. So the wage bill and all that sort of thing. And also, this is the first year I think I can remember since talking about Manchester United on YouTube. This is the first year United are going to be bringing in significant money, whether it's like from Rasmus Højlund, which is almost like a done deal with Napoli, and if you're looking at other deals, they're going to be significant money. So with that in mind, there's going to be definitely a bit more money to spend. Also, I think it's necessary if United spend big this summer and get it right, they're not going to have to, they're not going to have to do too much next season. So it's kind of one of these things that once you get back to the Champions League, you need to stay there. So if Manchester United can do what Aston Villa are doing, where show a bit more consistency, and Aston Villa probably are the best example. They're not the biggest budget team, but they've managed to run a European campaign without dropping down the league. Newcastle, they've somewhat fallen apart in the Premier League, if I'm honest. If you look at the league form, I thought they might struggle a bit, but they've been. I've been surprised how bad Newcastle have been in the Premier League, because in Champions League they've actually been very good. So it is obviously like a bit bizarre, isn't it? So Stiller should be our go-to guy if we don't get Anderson. Say no other options to sway it onto. It would be one where that United could go early to try and get that one. So I think it could go definitely. If you consider the budget in terms of how much Manchester United can spend, I can't remember if it's exactly this figure, but isn't it about £3 million per position in the Premier League? So finishing from like 10th, so finishing 15th last season and then finishing fifth, say 10 positions in the league, isn't it about £30 million extra in terms of prize money? And then the Champions League qualification is now bigger than ever. Don't forget, Manchester United's one of the bigger grounds in the Premier League as well. So Champions League money, extra gate receipts. It is win-win for United financially, but you've got to make sure that you stay in the Premier League. Like just visiting the just visiting the Champions League, and then dropping out like Newcastle are doing is going to be difficult long term. And I think if United, we did lose some money actually. We lost a bit of money on some of the sponsorships from Adidas because we didn't have Champions League football. So some of those sponsorship deals and endorsements will also increase. So that's an extra bit of a boost as well. The only thing that kind of offsets that is probably Manchester United. We pay an extra 20% or 25% player salaries when we get Champions League football, but the Adidas deal does go up. Like we get an extra 10 million at least from Adidas by getting Champions League football, and I think that might be true for some other endorsements. But this is financially it's going to be a huge boost. I think that's what we're trying to say. Yeah, it is about 3 million per position, isn't it? So when you think about it, finishing like when teams are in mid-table and you think right, a couple of wins can move you from maybe I don't know 12th to like 8th or something. It's an extra 12 million. It's 30 million pounds. The difference between finishing 15th and 5th, just in prize money from league position, pays for someone like Dorgu, doesn't it? That Hayden Hackney's worth 30 million. That's the price. and finishing fifth gives you that 30 million. So it's pretty good. It's pretty good. I say no, it's not. No, I'll say this: it's not 60 million for first place. I think every single team in the Premier League gets about 100 million from prize money, revenue sharing, other deal things. But the difference is going to be like, say, if you got, I think first place gets more than 100. So just say, for example, if you got like 80 for finishing 10th, you would then get like 90 for finishing, let's say 89 for finishing a few positions higher. No, you get more than 100 million for finishing first in the Premier League, prize money wise. I'm pretty sure that's the case. The money in the Premier League, when I have this conversation and I say teams at the bottom of the Premier League, like West Ham, they have a bigger budget than a lot of bigger teams in different leagues. That's where the money is. The Premier League is awash with cash. Crazy. That's why teams at the bottom of the league can pay 40 million pounds for signings. Like, what teams across Europe are paying 40, 50 million pounds when they join the Premier League? Which teams are getting relegated in La Liga and selling their top players for 40, 50 million to other teams near the bottom? It doesn't happen in other leagues. That's why it's so difficult. Like, we're going to teams at the bottom of the league. That's why these players are costing so much. So, and actually, that's why West Ham paid a lot of money for Fernandez, and he's a top quality player. So not watching the Bundesliga, Gaz. Yeah, no, that's a fair point. A lot of people don't watch the Bundesliga, but everybody that does watch the Bundesliga is really happy with him. So I would say at the moment, then what happened was Stuttgart bought back they bought the release clause for about 2 million, and now there is no release clause at all. There's no release clause for Stiller, but it's rumored to be that Stuttgart won about 50 million. So they won about 50-ish million. It could rise a little bit, I believe, but that could be about the price it's going to cost. So about 50 million is probably about the benchmark. I'm hoping the Madrid interest is yeah, I'm hoping the Madrid interest is not too serious with Stiller because that might possibly push the price up a little bit. Essentially, with this one, it's Vivel. Vivel has good relationship with all German clubs and good network. So if Stiller wants to join Manchester United, I feel that would be the first deal we do. It's going to be one of those in the. So what I should do is I normally put a poll in the chat. I haven't got a poll in the chat at the moment, but I will put one in to say I'll put the price points in, and this is going to be a Baleba question about maybe essentially judging whether you think we should get Baleba. So what I'll do is I'll put a few price points and just say the maximum price United should pay, because that's going to be. So let's put that in and say, um, so how much would you pay for Baleba is the question, okay? How much would you pay? Because I know a few people have posted things in the chat. So I think the base price has got to be 50. Like whether you don't value Belieber or not, then it's going to be like 50 million pounds is going to be the lowest price, I think. So if you got 50 million there, and then, or maybe I'll put 40 in there. I'll give people the option. If you think he's not worth 50, you can click 40. Okay, so that's fair. But Manchester United valuing him at 50. I don't think there's any chance we get him for 50. That's I'm guessing, but if you want to value him at that, and I would say 60 would be possibly like I think 60 million would be maybe about fair, and then 70 million plus would be if Brighton just think that he should be costing that much. I think if too many goes for 70 million, like just imagine too many goes for 70 million. I don't think Brighton can actually say that Belieber's worth 70 million. That would be unrealistic. But how much would you pay? So let's put that in there. So how much would you pay for Belieber? That's just a free vote. So let me know what you think. Because I was thinking if I put like a would you buy him or not, it's a bit more binary. But if you want to put that, just to give an idea of how much people value him at. If you're interested, I did a poll about maybe about towards the end of the summer, and the question was, should Manchester United spend 112 million on Baleba because that was like Caicedo money, and there was a positive vote. People voted that we should. So not my view. I think it was like a lot of money. But in terms of like the voting, people watching, people voted yes, we should spend over 100. So wow, yeah. No, we lost revenue on lack of games, 100%. This season, we have lost revenue from games. Like that's what I'm saying. The Champions League football money is gone, but yeah. So you'd only pay 30. Yeah, that's what I mean. The 40's there if you think it's going to be. There's no way that Manchester United are going to buy Baleba for Hayden Hackney money at all, at all. Um, but if you're looking at if you're looking at goals and assists, then if Manchester United are going to go for players like Tchouaméni, yeah, you're not going to be looking at that. So if you can get five players under 200 million, I don't think you're going to get five players under 200 million unless you're looking at a relegated West Ham, in which case Fernandez is there for 34 million. You're looking at maybe Gomez for possibly, maybe it's going to be like 35. We don't know exactly. There'll be definitely things talked about Wolves, West Ham. When the relegation's sorted, we might have an idea about some clauses. There will certainly be a few clauses in different contracts which will come up in discussion. That's something that happens every single year. One thing that was a big factor last year, if you remember, there was a lot of gentlemen's agreements that caused problems. There was a gentleman's agreement with Isak, apparently. There was a gentleman's agreement with Gyökeres, which caused problems. And apparently, at the moment, there's supposed to be a gentleman's agreement with Adam Wharton. I think it was that he would go for 60, 65 million. So it would be that Crystal Palace wouldn't put an incredibly high price. So maybe that opens up a few more options. So if Adam Wharton, maybe that's a good move for him from him, because it would mean that if the price doesn't go incredibly high for Adam Wharton, it might give him one more options of where to go, but two also make sure that he's probably looking for a good salary as well, and he doesn't want the teams having to spend it all on transfer fees. So that could be potentially one story. Tabasta says his wages wouldn't be that high, so overall cheaper deal. If you look, are you talking about Baleba? If you're talking about Baleba, Baleba gets 12.5k, I think at the moment. So I think 12.5k at Brighton. So so Laurie Whitwell, yeah, I think Laurie Whitwell talking about this in terms of I think Manchester United's interest is serious. It's always been about the price with Brighton, isn't it? Like Manchester United fans probably peaked last summer and have probably gradually over the course of the summer lost interest in Carlos Baleba. Whereas if you look at the media, there hasn't been anything about Baleba apart from occasionally every couple of weeks or few weeks. It's been that Baleba is still of interest to Manchester United. They're never saying he's the top target. He's not necessarily going to be the top target, but he's always of interest to Manchester United. That story's never gone away. So so Yali says it would not surprise me that we're going to sponsor the new stadium. So yeah, one I suppose with this one, like getting our training gear sponsored. If Manchester United get Champions League football, which looks almost certain, then I think their sponsorship deals are going to be absolutely fine. For a financial point of view as well, I read last year that Manchester United's training sponsor, I think they need to get another one, but the last one it was bringing in the same sort of money as the main sponsor of Aston Villa's kit. So the financial difference between United and teams like Villa is very high, and that's why Villa are spending good money, and Manchester United can spend more. They're just a bigger club. Yeah, exactly. So that's what I'm saying. Like equal share fee, like good research, Cody. That I knew it was over 100 million how much you get from this, but if you finish third, then it's a merit payment factored in terms of like obviously that's going to be a lot better than finishing lower. So you've got a selection. You're saying it like could total up to 160 million pounds Manchester United get in prize money from the Premier League. That is like crazy. I knew it was over 100 for if you finish 20th in the Premier League, you get over 100. If you finish because if you look at it, the live broadcast revenue does go slightly up for Manchester United than some teams because maybe there's a few more games being broadcast, but the equal share will be level across the board. So every single club in the Premier League gets a base of 96 million pounds from the Premier League. That this is why teams that this is why there's do you remember Nottingham Forest coming up to the Premier League and then buying about 15 players and spending loads of money? It's because if you stay in the Premier League, you get bankrolled. I don't know what happened with Leicester City, but they mismanaged their club massively because getting to the Premier League gives you a huge advantage with that sort of money. If you factor that in, and this is why when people are looking at it and saying, can Man United spend? If you factor that in with this, add Champions League money on top, and Champions League money was estimated by someone in the chat about like 90 million because that's expanding as well. If you look at that, all the merchandise and things as well, United actually has dropped down a bit in terms of how it compares to teams around the top financially, but that's without Champions League money. When you put Champions League money back in, Manchester United's turnover should probably be second only to Real Madrid. If like Real Madrid are usually top in Europe and probably top in the world, so United's financial status should be back up to maybe like second, third in Europe if they do get once they get Champions League football. It is crazy, isn't it? If you think Manchester United could potentially sell £100 million worth of players in Agate, Xerxes, and let's be honest, Xerxes doesn't really play. Agate hardly plays, and Rasmus has going to be going for 40 uh, to Napoli. He's obviously out on loan. Rashford's out on loan. Onana's gone. So add all this in. I'm not saying we're going to do. I'm not going to say we're going to be doing something similar to Liverpool, but financially, Manchester United could do something they've never done before. It's going to be. This is why I'm saying that this transfer window, everybody's thinking about the financial situation, but when you add that prize money up, and it's a nice breakdown, it's a huge amount of money, isn't it? So there's a lot of money coming into United, and financially, actually, even without Champions League football, we're making a little bit profit. I'm not sure about Onana. Onana's not coming back. Like where he goes is a mystery, but he won't be a Manchester United player. He won't be bringing in loads of money, but after a few years, it will be. Yeah. What's my thoughts with this one, Peter? That's going to be like I think it's going to be a 1 p.m. stream where we focus on like some of the other stories coming out today. My thoughts on this one were um, I didn't like him at 100 million. I think it depends on the price. That how much will the Glazers allow for transfers? Yeah, that is probably the question. That financially, this is going to be my argument with this one. Financially, Manchester United, the money's there. They can spend big if they want to, but what they're looking at, I think, is you spend £200 million on the midfield, then they're looking at spending. And again, this is like coming out from the media. Three midfield players, about 200 million, an attacking player like a left winger. They've earmarked about £70 million for that. If you consider looking at Diamonde, looking at possibly a move for Semenyo in January. They said they'd go for Semenyo in January. That price was 70 million. So, or was it 65 million plus add-ons? But that sort of money. And they're also looking at potential options for other positions in the team. So I would be surprised if Manchester United spend that sort of price. That if they don't spend 250 million, it's going to be a struggle to try and do this sort of thing. So Manchester United currently aim to make four major signings. So I think the key here is major, and I would say major signings are going to be first team players. So if you consider this, look at Manchester United's squad. If you could put in four elite players into that team, I mean you've already got good players in certain positions, haven't you? So you've already got a good goalkeeper, you've got good attacking players. So I could probably say off the top of my head, you're going to look at what four major signings, two midfield signings that are major, maybe one midfield signing that's considered a bit cheaper, and then a major attacking signing. I think they're going to go for. So I don't know who it's going to be, but it looks like they want to get a left winger, which would be it's probably going to be major in terms of price. And I'm just wondering whether would they go for three major midfield signings? Would they do like an Embuemo, Cunha, Sesko in midfield? Would they really go for three very big midfield signings, or is there actually an opportunity to go for a big centre back option? That's one where I'm thinking that it could be potentially that. Say two midfielders, one striker, one left back. Is that your opinion, or is that going to be is that linked to the story? I think it's something similar. Too many Baleba and I might be one of the cheaper ones. He looked good. I say if don't go by stats because Everton play defensive, and is actually a good player. He might be one of the best value players kind of around at the moment. But in terms of like how much it might cost, Diamonde would be the most expensive probably based on valuation, but I'm sure that price would come a bit down. But no, so financially speaking, this could be a bigger transfer window than last season, where I think you get the four players in, like we got last season, that are first team players, and then you get some players that are going to be other options around the club. So I still think 6 to 7 players would be kind of at least the benchmark you need to look at. I'm not sure that we can be looking at academy players to make up the numbers. That maybe that's going to be something that they can play a little bit over the year, but I think largely speaking, United need to get four players, and either those players bench some of the first team uh, and make it add a bit more depth, or maybe it gives us more options. I think we need to be looking next season. We need to be looking at the bench and seeing at least 4 or 5 players that we know have played high level Premier League football for a while, not have lots of academy players because we're going to need a bit more depth in these competitions. But no, if you think of that, I think too many plus Baleba plus Angela Stiller would be achievable financially if that's possible. So yeah, Laura Whitwell has been very busy this morning. I think it's an indication that credible news is coming out. So what I've been seeing is maybe like a bit more from Whitwell, a bit more from Andy Mitten, a bit more from like Ornstein recently. And I think Fabrizio's like 24/7, he's saying something about something. Ben Jacobs will be quite prolific as well. But I think Laurie Whitwell coming out is probably I think he's probably like the top tier for UK Manchester United sources. Like he's up there, and I would say that when Whitwell's talking, that people like myself, I've got it on screen as well. Lloyd Whitwell, athletic source with a believer, and he's been talking about this morning and in the Athletic as well. That's why we're talking about this the discussion that again, it's whether you think Belieber's going to be good or not. Then it's almost like feels like inevitable that Manchester United will make a move if it's all down to Brighton, isn't it? It might be that United go to Brighton and say, right, we're going to pay, say, offer 50, and I think it's like a reasonable chance that Brighton, well, probably Brighton are going to say no, but then it's going to be, if I was going to guess, I'd say 60 plus add-ons. I think might be a believer deal. So I'm not sure what's how many add-ons, but I'm thinking that if you can like give a guaranteed figure, it'll be a bit over 50. And I'm thinking like, what was the deal we did for Mbeumo? Was that 65 plus 7? I think maybe if you're looking at Baleba, because you've got other options around there, I think you might be looking at something like that. That's what I'm thinking. So I'm just looking at the price, thinking 50 is going to be a bit cheap, unless there's a medical issue. That's the only thing. I would love to actually know, but medical stuff should be confidential. If I knew 100% there was zero injury issues and he had a knock early in the season but gradually improved, I would be looking at, yeah, I'd be looking at that. So Romano is spinning the same stuff every day. Whitwell's on the same route. So yeah, maybe do you get the feeling, Rob and other people, that I think United are going to go for a few of the obvious options, like Baleba and Anderson are obvious options to go for, and I don't think yeah, all these players we've got, I don't think you can get both. It's like I think Tonali might be a bit pricey, and it might be very difficult, but no, when you're looking at this, it looks like that we would probably go for Baleba more achievable. I mean, one of the things that is a factor, I know when we're talking about it, a lot of people want to see things happen very quickly. But at the moment, I think if West Ham stay up and if West Ham do not get relegated, I don't think they lose Fernandez. I think Fernandez stays at the club. They only just bought him. They would put the price immediately up to about 70 million, and I don't think people are going to be buying Fernandez for that price. And if Nottingham Forest stay up, I think they will seriously try and keep some of their players. If they get European football again next season, it might be that Anderson cost a fortune. And if Spurs stay up, then I think some of the Spurs players will also be too expensive. But if Spurs get relegated or West Ham get relegated, I think we're going to see suddenly loads of stories because if West Ham get relegated, I think there's going to be a few players leaving. Like certainly, if there's like relegation clauses that kick in, then yeah, it's just saying if saying you guess West Ham should go down. If you want to get Diouf, if you want to get Fernandez, Bowen might be difficult because he's got a long-term contract. If you want those, then possibly say we got Champions League, and say Cam Fernandez, if Fernandez can try and initiate a transfer, it's still going to be very expensive. I think there might be a release clause that there might be a relegation clause which pushes Fernandez's price down to 34 million. And if that's the case, then every team's going to be interested, but it's going to be really difficult, really difficult. And so Anderson will leave irrespective if Forest stay up. I, yeah, you probably got a good point. What if they get European football? Then I think there's clauses there. Also, Ben Jacobs said this 6 months ago. I don't know how true it is, but we might find out very soon. But Ben Jacobs said that if Forest don't get European football, then there's certain clauses in the contract that means that Anderson might be a bit cheaper. I don't know because at the moment everybody thinks Anderson's going to be incredibly expensive, but there is potentially clauses in the contract that we're not aware of. So again, that's why I'm saying that we don't know 100% what's going to happen with this one. So at the moment, let's have a look at the poll. So if people want to vote, I give people a few more minutes to vote. I don't know if with Anderson initiating a transfer, given that he's only been at West Ham for a year, I don't know. I mean, Paris Saint-Germain are interested as well. So if Anderson's forcing his way out, I don't. There's no guarantee it's to Manchester United. So if people are watching for the first time today, please subscribe. We're actually I think we're quite close to hitting 600 subscribers. So you might be the person that can subscribe to hit that target if you get involved either today or later on today. So looking at the poll result, and this is the interesting one. How much would you pay for Baleba? So according to the people voting today, how much would you pay for Baleba? Then the most popular price was 60 million. People would pay 60 million for Baleba. 24% pay 50, 20% 40. Only 4% of people will pay over 70, which I think is in this market, I think you don't need to pay 70. So it's not going to cost that much. Then if Tchouaméni was 100 million and Tonali was 120 million, then but it does feel a bit like you don't have to pay that sort of money. Again, we'll probably find out a bit more. Like I said, we'll probably find out a bit more in the near future. At the moment, just a quick question then. If you had to guess how much Anderson goes for and Tonali, do you think we're looking at over 100 million, or do you think we'll see something closer to like 80 million? Like, do you think we will genuinely see £100 million signings in the summer? Like last summer was probably Isak and Verts for that sort of money. You don't get loads. And with the players being talked about at the moment, if Tchouameni is 70 million, like is Anderson going to be really £30 million more than that? So too many, too many of his eyes shut. Then just to just to guess, because at the moment I'm not sure. So Yari says they will go for over 100 million. So do you think, are we talking like Caicedo? Are we going to be talking like 100, 110? At the moment, everything's really quiet. I think Forest are one win away from maybe being like almost safe, and maybe we'll see something happen then. Then I guess with like Manchester City, if they're prepared to spend £70 million for Semenyo and they're looking at replacing Rodri, if they think he's the real deal, then the price could go very high, couldn't it? There, it is a kind of a thing though that Manchester City, they don't tend, apart from Grealish, who had a release clause, they don't really spend that sort of money. They tend to spend a little bit lower. But so Newcastle got crazy money for Isak. They're doing it again now. So the Forest owners, yeah, he will overprice anything. Yeah. The thing is, when we're looking at Anderson, when you think Alanga went for 60, no, at the time, I was just genuinely surprised Alanga went for 60 million. And when Alanga goes for 60 million, you look at Mbeumo and Cunha as being very good deals, don't you? And it could be if something happens in the summer. I'm just trying to think: is there any deal? Is there any deal remotely similar to Alanga? Because Alanga going for that sort of money, I'm just thinking if like say Joe Gomez went for like 55 or 60 or something, or if a player goes for like 20 million pounds more than you're expecting, I thought Alanga was a decent player for Forest, but 60 felt like a big stretch, didn't it? It does seem to be a lot, and Gittins for 60 as well did feel like a lot of money spent considering what they got. Like they got players that were a lot worse than Cunha for that sort of money. So no, I was just thinking, is there going to be any sort of deal that happens where I don't know, so if Alex Scott went for like say 65, 70 million, suddenly that might push prices up a little bit. If Tonali went for over 100, then maybe you start thinking, actually, wow, because I don't know. There is like loads of hype about this, but you just don't know whether it's going to happen. I mean, at the moment, Spurs West Ham, it's difficult, isn't it? I think Spurs might play Wolves. It might be. I think Spurs next game might be against Wolves, and if that's the case, a win there puts West Ham back down. It's really difficult, isn't it? But with 4 games to go, if West Ham get a, as if Forest get a win, yeah, it could have been. And so, yeah, we did that in the past, didn't we? United overpaid a little bit. And Cody says Matheus Fernandes idolises Bruno Fernandes, plus the opportunity to play for a top side in the Champions League, bigger salary. They say it's a no-brainer. So yeah, it doesn't matter if you just joined. It does matter to West Ham though that if West Ham get relegated, Fernandez is gone. I just don't know where. The stream we did last night talking about Fernandez, if Paris Saint-Germain are genuinely interested, then it might be difficult. It might be difficult if he wants to, unless he wants to stay in the Premier League. I think the Matheus Fernandez one is probably really hard to predict, isn't it? Because I look at Fernandez, think that he's a really good Premier League player, but I don't want Manchester United have him really high up the. Like, I don't think United would see him as a 70 million pound signing if West Ham stay up. So, but if West Ham got relegated, I think 34 million pounds, then I think he's up there with Gomez as a cheap option. So no, it is a good sensible option to go. So I agree with you, Cody. Make a lot of sense that one. But he will probably. I think Fernandez would want to go, but he would accept probably that he's going to stay for another year, improve. If West Ham improve, then maybe it's more good experience. But I don't think people are going to be. I think it's a bit early for people to start paying 70 million pounds for him at the moment because of all the options out there. I mean, too many for me is almost like setting a benchmark. And I've said a few times, if too many's got no injury issues and he costs 70 million pounds, then for me, the reason why it could be quite a good deal is potentially he's starting to get not many years left on his contract, and it might be that Real Madrid are thinking, actually, we're going to get a new player in it anyway. If you're not going to sign a new contract, you need to be moved out. So I think when you start getting to 2 years left on your contract, I think teams need to be either it's a new contract or you start looking at an exit for this player because it's too risky to lose top players on a free. And once you get to a year on your contract, the price is just going to start coming down really quickly, isn't it? So I think 2 years left on your contract, and it's, I think with Baleba might be getting to that stage as well, where Brighton might be worried about him going on a very cheap deal. So this is the only reason why I think United could get like a 60 million pound deal, but 50 might be pushing it, and I think 50 million pounds will be a cheap, like a very cheap deal for a midfield player. I don't think you're going to get much cheaper than that, as my guess at the moment. But maybe some of the things is going to be that it was there one deal last season that kind of made things crazy. It might have been the Isak deal. In my mind, it might have been. I think it was. I think it might have been Chelsea spending big on Gittins that kind of pushed some of the prices up. And Nottingham Forest selling Alanga for 55 plus 5 was like probably maybe it's the one where we started thinking actually we might end up having to spend a little bit more on Mbuemo. Luckily, we got that deal over the line though. But 50 million for Believer. If people got some comments on the midfield stuff we've been talking about, so I think it's good to offer 50 because if you offer 60 or 70, do you know what I'm thinking? That I would not be surprised if we see Manchester United going with a first offer. Well, I can't. What was the first offer we made for? First offer we made for Mbuemo last season. It didn't get accepted, but then you find out quickly what they want. If you offer 50, Brighton will say no, and then it could be like Manchester United make a second offer of 60, or they have some more talks and go, actually, what do you want? I get the feeling that Brighton would definitely take 80. That's why I'm thinking 60 plus add-ons might be something. 60 plus certain milestones, maybe take the deal up closer to 70. That's what I'm thinking, but it would be down the line. So it seems like a lot of money with 65 million pound first bid. Then in the end, we played like add-ons, didn't we? So I thought it was like, was it 60 plus five? Like 60 up front, five add-ons, and then it was like 60 plus like more add-ons or something. It ended up being like a little bit of a drawn out process. But I think with Belieber, if you can offer 50 plus 10 or something like that, I think there's going to be add-ons. And I think Manchester United are going to structure the deal in that way and say, look, maybe if you play like 30 games for us or you get a certain milestone, then you're going to get the extra money. So make the milestones achievable. And I think the biggest stumbling point with Brentford was, if you remember last season, actually, this is an interesting point. If you remember last season, Manchester United made an offer from Buemo, and I remember this specifically because we were looking into it, and they wanted to put in actually add-ons, and Manchester United's add-ons they wanted to add were linked to team performance. So, where Manchester United finished in the league, etc., that would be triggering the add-ons from Buemo. Whereas Brentford, they wanted the add-ons to be player specific. So in terms of how many games does Mbeumo play, goals, assists, etc. And looking at this situation at the moment, I think that maybe if you're looking at this one, I think that if Brentford have actually gone for like team-related performance, they may have got the add-ons triggered a bit quicker. Manchester United qualifying for the Champions League, and this is one thing I said actually. This is something to mention as well. If you're following transfers and you're interested in how the deal was structured, to get the very top add-ons for Mbeumo, I read last year Manchester United have to qualify for the Champions League. So qualifying for the Champions League will probably mean that Man United actually pay the rest of Mbeumo's add-ons. That might be it because I think Champions League qualification was the one that was deemed difficult to hit in terms of like no. And I said at the time, if we get Champions League football, no one's going to care that Mbeumo add-ons get triggered because we've got Champions League football. It's a huge amount. It represents that we've improved massively as a club, but it represents that Manchester United financially have benefited loads from these signings. So a really good deal to put in. And welcome to the chat. So are you thinking it's a good deal, bad deal? What's your thoughts on Belieber? At the moment, we did a poll. You won't be able to see the result because it was about 10 minutes ago. But the poll was, and what price would you pay for Belieber? And the most popular opinion was about 60 million. I mean, 50, I think, is going to be uh, it's not going to happen for 50. I'm not sure it'd happen for 60, but my guess is going to be 60 plus add-ons as a rough guess. It's just kind of where the market is for midfield players. I think it's very difficult to get deals like on the cheaper end. I think you're looking at if a team gets relegated, if Brighton were going to get relegated, I think we could be looking at right. Let's get some sensible prices here, but I don't think that that's going to be the case. I think Manchester United are going to have to work hard to get this deal at a sensible price. But Brighton also have to be mindful that is Baleba going to go into like 2 years left on his contract? Brighton have to be wary that if Manchester United walk away and Baleba stays at the club, they could be facing a situation where maybe he's going to go for a lot less money. And I said like yesterday that Brighton will like 100% have a few players lined up that they're ready to go for as soon as Belieber gets sold. As soon as Belieber gets sold, they're gonna buy certain players for a cheap price. They kind of already I'm sure they've already got these players lined up. The same with way that Brentford had players ready for when Mbeumo goes. That's why Brentford got annoyed that we were taking so long because the market was actually going up a little bit and they wanted to get the replacements in. So all these things are linked. Brighton will have their deals they want to do, and say 80 million for Belieber with add-ons or not if they like robbery. Say make it nearly Anderson or Tonali deal. I suppose with this one, if Anderson's like 120, it could be a lot cheaper, Jim. But to say based on what I've seen, then I don't think Agate's ever played that well in the Premier League. So I don't think he'd be another Agate. He's a better player than Agate. The question mark is how much better is he than this one? Like a good season a year ago, indifferent season. But I think some people were saying that okay, he's not been as good, but it's not that he's been really, really poor. It's that he has dropped off a little bit. And I go, yeah, I do. I always say I agree with this one that I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that he was putting in great performances now. He's played better against Chelsea. Chelsea are very poor at the moment, though, so there is a few reasons for that. And I think I don't think we're going to be seeing, say, the next few games where Believer suddenly puts in crazy performances and his price goes even higher. So no, I take that. Just a question for people that are new to the channel, because we did a poll earlier on today. And what would you be looking at if you were gonna buy him? What would be your price? And big it's you, Danny. We had a big chat just a minute ago about Fernandez, who I know you're a big fan of. But I think Brighton also might have to be in mind that Manchester United, Chelsea, Real Madrid, these players are starting to look further afield. So the deals you used to do for South American players and the deals you used to do for players in La Liga or um, Ligue 1 in like the French league. If you start looking at those sort of deals that Brighton have done in the past, other teams will be on the ball there. So this sort of kind of model of actually buying players cheap and selling them on might be getting more difficult. Like look at Chelsea. Chelsea are going to try and sell Garnacho for a profit, and that might be a big struggle. And one thing you might be interested to know, I saw there was a Chelsea channel I saw that was they're obviously having a call-in show. They weren't very happy and they were I think they were talking about Garnacho, and I just said, "Thanks for taking Garnacho off our hands." And they think they're going to sell Garnacho for a profit, if you can believe that. So they think they're going to get a nice profit from Garnacho. I don't know what they've been watching, but I don't think Garnacho is going to go for any sort of profit. It was quite funny, but that's genuinely the thoughts of some fans that, from what I've seen from Garnacho, I don't think he should be. Well, I think they might try and sell him, but I'd be amazed if someone paid more than that for him. We do have a sell on. So I said my response was, well, we have a sell on clause, so hopefully you do get a profit. I just don't see it happening really, to be honest. And so 10% of the profit. So if you went for 50, we get two. No, we get 1 million. Yeah, we're not going to get much from that, are we? Like, there's no way Ganacho goes for like 70 or 80 as a. And Kaiser says 40 million plus add-ons, you think? Then I think Brighton would want more, but again, uh, as a first one, it'd be difficult. So Clive's gone for like 55 plus add-ons. Yeah, my guess is going to be that if United think 50, then I think you're going to go a little bit higher with some add-ons. That's only if Manchester United really believe that it's going to be a good option. And I just said like a couple of minutes ago that the add-ons for Embuemo were some of them were based on Champions League football, so they're probably being ticked off now. But no, I think this one, what do you put as a criteria though? That Balebo's not a goal scorer, then I think it's got to be. I think it's got to be probably games. Like if he starts like a certain amount of games, that maybe add-ons get ticked off for like 20 games, 40 games, and maybe that's something you could look at. So it could be that you kind of like, yeah, if he doesn't play much football, maybe you have those add-ons. I'd be genuinely interested actually to know the Xerxes deal and the Rasmus Højlund deal. They were supposed to have add-ons as well. I'm guessing that a lot of those add-ons didn't actually get realised either. Yes, definitely. I think that's the only thing you can put in, isn't it? If you're going to get a striker, you can put definitely some metrics in there, can't you? Into that when Man United finished 15th, we put some club metrics in there, like do we get Champions League, do we get Europa League, how many goals are you going to score? If you're looking at a more defensive-minded player or a midfield player, maybe it's going to be some team goals as well, and it's going to be if Manchester United get back in the Champions League. But I think ideally it's got to be appearances, isn't it? And then if Man United buy Baleba but also get Tonali or also get Tchouaméni, then maybe Baleba isn't a regular starter either. And then the add-ons like just take time. Or so I think that's probably the most sensible. So, but no, it's going to be one where United negotiation department is not exactly rapid, and Brighton are. It's like dealing with like Daniel Levy, isn't it? It's like such a pain dealing with Brighton. I don't know why. It's a shame Believer plays for Brighton and not for. I'm just trying to think of and not another club that's easier to deal with. But say 40 million plus, that would be kind of sensible. I think United have to go like 50-ish plus add-ons to get some sort of deal. And I think if people want to get a cheaper deal, then I just don't think it's going to happen. Welcome to the chat. Thanks for getting involved. So let me just check the name. That's quite difficult to pronounce. So Hilm, thanks for getting involved. Says watch out before regret. Believer such as Agate. So I saw somebody post like a really similar comment somewhere else saying about headless chicken, and you say he's like an average skill set and Agate 2.0. And then all I can say about comparisons with Agate is I've seen more from Belieber, but I haven't seen consistent higher level performances. Like Agate is obviously not good enough. And Belieber's got a couple of years, he's a few years younger than Agate, or at least a couple of years younger than Agate. I think he's got a lot more potential than Agate, but I don't think he's like got to that level where you think he's actually consistent. So again, if you pay big money for Baleba, it feels a bit like a gamble of like whether he's good enough. Whereas if you're going to buy Anderson or Tonali or Tchouaméni or players that are a bit more experienced, just be more consistent for longer, do you get the idea that it's actually going to be more sensible to spend that money? And if Baleba's going to be like a cheap option, why don't we go for Angela Stiller? Why don't we go for Gomez instead? Like, why don't we go for those other players? It's quite tricky, isn't it? So you're coming. I'll say your comments are coming across quite calm. So don't worry about stating your opinions. That all opinions are welcome and kind of they just feed into the debate. That if I've got one view on a player, it's really good to get different views. One of the things I found interesting is talking about Gomez at Wolves, there's a combination of people that think he's amazing, a combination of people that think he's no good. If you talk about Tonali, there's a combination of people that think he's unbelievable. There's some people that think he's way overpriced and overhyped and inconsistent. So you're not going to get agreement on a lot of players, apart from maybe Anderson. Actually, too many got a lot of people, a lot of people. And big up to you, Danny B says 5:30 a.m. listening to it instead of getting ready for work. You start early, my friend. That is very early. 5:30. Wow, I'm not alive at 5:30. No, I need to like try and actually I can't do streams as long as I did at night at the moment because it's getting a bit too tiring. I mean, I do think the 9 a.m. is a great stream to kick off the day, and I think I might have to just do something a bit earlier in the evening and not quite so late. But the mad stats out there, Belieber say Brighton have lost 70% of the games Belieber started this season. Do you know what? One of the stats they have in American sports is like win above replacement. I think it's like a baseball stat or like one of those stats or an NBA stat. And it would be really interesting to see where, for example, you have Manchester United. How do Manchester United do with Agate and Casemiro or with Casemiro and Casemiro? And I think that's the only way you can kind of like go right, like essentially the same team. And the stat does actually hold up quite well. So you do have like wins above replacement for top teams might be, it might be that if Manchester United start with Casemiro instead of we start with Manu instead of Agate over the season, they're going to get like five more wins or something. So it'll give you an idea, like for like sort of player. So it'll give you an idea of roughly where you can go. And so 8 p.m. is not a bad time, is it? 8 p.m. is decent. I think 8 p.m. would be something I'd go for because sometimes with seven after having food, etc., it makes it tricky. But I think something like that is going to be good. The only issue I've got is evening streams. It is great to get guests on when guests are available. So it's going to be somewhere between 7 and like 8:30 is the starting time. I think is the best guess because like Helgi was available at 9, so we started at 9, and I would be probably available. I can do like 8 p.m. But when Kieran comes back in, for people that are new to the channel, big treat next week. Kieran's going to come back. He's a exceptional guest, so it's going to be very good. Yeah, 8 p.m. is fine. I mean, if football's on anyway, then we'll do it anyway. but I just wanted to go for this. I just thought that was an interesting stat. So there, there's been a few. I don't know if people will rewatch the streams because they're quite long at the moment as we're kind of like try and build back up. But during the streams, there's quite a few people that say like Danny B or like Coyote and Rob and Jules and other people that contribute. And people do regularly post quite a lot of interesting stats and a lot of interesting. Like we were talking a little bit about Premier League, Champions League prize money and the breakdowns and how much money there is to spend. There's a lot of money to spend when you add it all up. It's up to Manchester United whether they spend it, but there's a lot of money to spend. Yeah, Brighton will be aware that the price has gone down, won't they? I mean, I know they want an incredibly high price, but Brighton will be aware of this fact, won't they? I'm pretty sure. One thing I would say to people as well, I saw a video on YouTube recently about how YouTube notifications, etc. And I know people click the bell, which is excellent, and enable notifications, which is great. But YouTube doesn't actually send out that many notifications now. It tends to send out a small test sample, and then based on that, maybe expand the reach. So if you want to be kept up to date on when we're going to stream and join socials, etc., there is a link pinned at the top, which has the Discord group which has got about 65, 66 people in at the moment. That's pretty great. That Jim posts things in the Discord. So if you want to know when we're going to stream, it's generally at the moment going to be, I think, 9 a.m., 1 p.m., 8 p.m. ish, that sort of time. But it does seem to be that at the moment, no, things might change. It depends on guests, things might change. If I'm not available, then streams might be delayed or cancelled. But the Discord seems to be um, actually a really good place, or the Facebook group, just where you'll see notifications and know when we're streaming. So question, why is there no one else seemingly in for Believer, or is there, so Stephanie? So really good question. I think what we're seeing with this one is that with transfers at the moment, it seems to happen with the player first. And Manchester United made the contact last summer. Believer agreed terms, but a Believer wanted to be a Manchester United player, and I think that's probably put players off. There's a combination of two things. One is going to be there's loads of actual yeah, there's loads of news coming out that Believer wanted to join Manchester United, and then there's lots and lots of midfielders linked. I think that what happens is that because Believer wants to join Manchester United, it feels like other clubs are not going to be interested. That's one factor. It might be that every club has a different idea of which players they want as well. And it's again like if Manchester United were like there was a source in Portugal. I can't think what it's called. Was it like the Record or something? There's a newspaper in Portugal that every single day it would run a story linking Manchester United to Gyökeres, but Manchester United didn't actually make an offer for Gyökeres because they knew Gyökeres was more keen on Arsenal. So Manchester United didn't go there with an official offer. They might have asked a little bit, did a bit of, had a bit of a chat, but I think when you actually look at it, if Believer wants to join Manchester United, the same as if Anderson came out and said, "I want to join Manchester City," we'd hear nothing about it from like Man United. Then they'd have to move on and get a different target. And if Tchouaméni comes out and says, "I'm leaving Real Madrid," then the internet Man United fan base will explode with like stories and news coming out. So a lot of it is going to be it's coming from the player, isn't it? I think Stephanie, but also there's like about 10 midfield players we talked about today that are options. So I think Baleba like one option for Man United. I don't think he's on the top. I don't think he's a top option for a lot of other teams. That's what I genuinely believe. I think he's good, but I don't think he's the top option even for Manchester United. He's now become like I think a second to third option for United, and a lot of it with United is going to come down to now with like Barada saying like this is the price we're going to pay. If he's going to cost 70 million or 75 million, right, we're just going to go for any one of these other players, and that's the right strategy. If Man United, if I said that I think Baleba is a deal we could do at a sensible price. If Brighton don't play ball, we walk away, and then that's it. That's Brighton don't make the money from this deal, and they don't make the money next time. So it's there's no drama there, is there? It's just like you just go somewhere else. If that happens, yeah, honestly, I think Nottingham Forest season has got a few twists and turns in it as well. So I think Anderson's just being professional. So I think Anderson's doing the right thing. So whichever club gets Anderson will get a good player, but they're also going to get a player that's not going to be. pushing out stories, begging to go to a different club. Like Anderson is not the same as Isak. He's not the same as at the moment. I think Anthony Gordon is like basically just throwing himself at Liverpool. I don't know if Liverpool want him, but it's the last thing you want is if you're going to sign a player, the last thing you want is players throwing themselves at your club. And we've seen this with players going to, we saw this with Raheem Sterling saying he wants to play for a serious club and like throwing his toys out the pram. So unfortunately, there's a few players that will do that. I think Anderson that seems to be not one of those players, which is good. I don't know whether Tonali will be that as well. Exactly, Anderson's got a lot to play for, and that's why I think do Brighton still have a lot to play for as well. They probably do actually have European football to play for as well. So I think there's a few clubs that are almost like trying not to put news out there. Like Laurie Whitwell's obviously a journalist, but and we're talking about it on YouTube. But I'd imagine with some of the clubs, you've got to respect some of the situations the other teams are in. Like if Manchester United were trying to like if we were struggling to get Champions League football and we had like a key game coming up, the last thing you want is stories coming out talking about one of your players going somewhere else and having that player unsettled. So I don't think Manchester United are going to be trying to push out too many stories about certain clubs. Yeah, the second a team gets relegated, or the second like Forest or the season's resolved, I think it's going to happen so quickly. That's why with Anderson, I think we'll hear nothing, and then it's going to be suddenly talks begin, deal done. I think there's going to be rapid movement from either. If City move rapidly, Manchester United will have to try and respond if they've got a chance, and we'll see that wrapped up quite quickly. But I think United should go quickly for another player. But I don't know, I don't think it should necessarily be Baleba, but I think he should be on the list, or he should be one of the players at least considered. If anyone's got any final questions, I know the stream's been like quite long. I'm trying to keep streams a little bit shorter if I can, but again, it's just to give you people everyone like a even chance to have your say. And I will be looking at different stories about 1 p.m. today to cover a couple of different stories. But no, so no, I appreciate that Belieber's not for everybody. I just look at the comments and say just by looking at the comments, I can see that people will disagree and say I don't think he's as bad as you do, but I don't think he's as valuable as Brighton think. So I think there's some middle ground where I just look at him and say I think Belieber's good, but he's not elite, if that makes sense. So he's not going to be in the same bracket as Anderson and Tonali and Tchouaméni, but there's a price where he'd actually be a decent signing. I mean, he's not going to be as cheap as Hayden Hackney. It'd be that one. It's honestly, it's just a judgment call, isn't it? That what would be interesting is that I'm seeing loads of different views, and actually, I know it's this stream that there's one regular guest that in the chat actually. There's one person that's regularly in the chat usually that is quite a big Belieber fan. So there's still people that do like him, but I think most people have kind of changed a little bit and saying considering like is he still 20, considering I think he might be 21, but considering someone that's that age, it's a little bit like having a conversation about whether Mainu can be a 10 or a CDM or a box to box or an 8. If you're having conversations about players at that age, I think it's difficult to see what the ceiling is, and that if he's 21, then I think so, Stephanie. I think that's the current plan. Then possibly I'd like to go slightly earlier than 8 if I can, but it depends on like other things. But no, I should be sat here talking at 8 p.m. whether I've started a bit earlier, but 1 p.m. should be the go-to one. No, I think there's definitely consideration like to look at this age. I think if we looked at Anderson at 21, he probably wasn't on the radar of a lot of people, and now at age 23, he is. Believer's got another couple of years behind Anderson, so that's why I think you pay more. I think Anderson's more developed. He's got more experience. He's playing better as well. I just think I think there's development to do for Believer. I'm not going to say I think he's going to suddenly kick on and be amazing, but he showed potential a year ago, so there is a possibility. I'm just kind of being open-minded and thinking that if United bought him for 100 plus, I'd be very concerned, and I'd think that was a bad deal. But if Manchester United actually get the deal done for say I don't know, like what's the best case scenario? Like 50 plus some add-ons. Like I don't know. That would be good negotiations because I think Brighton won a lot of money, but I still think that it might be the 55, 60 is price point plus maybe some add-ons, but we'll see. It's one of these deals where if United do a deal, then it'll be a very interesting stream to see how people's reaction that once because something becomes news, people might have a different reaction, and sometimes there's a bit of positivity towards a player signing for you after they've signed, but at the moment it's kind of 50-50. I think there's probably like 20% of people say that he shouldn't cost 50. There's like half the people think he's that 50 to 60 is fair value, and then there's a few people that would actually pay even more for him. So I think that the middle ground is like 55, 60 million pounds, and that's probably puts him in line with a lot of other players we talked about, like loads of other players. So it seems like there's 29 people watching. If you're watching and you're new and you haven't subscribed, then please subscribe. Help us like push the community towards. We're getting very close to 600 subscribers, I believe, and almost like hopefully that gets hit today. It'd be quite a nice little target to hit today. So I think we're not far away from that target. So if you're new, please subscribe. Keep up to date with Manchester United news, and also we'll be doing a call-in show. The call-in show planned for Sunday. I think it's going to be a big call-in show this weekend. So we've got a few guests lined up, as well as people calling in, and we will be looking at opening up as well. A big up to you, Mark. Thank you for finding us again. Uh, there was an issue, beyond my control. The channel got removed. I don't have an official reason. I don't really know specifically. If you're in the Discord or Facebook group, I can, or you're on Twitter or other things, I can. But there's not really too much I can say that unfortunately it's a restart. But the good thing is, Mark, that I think yesterday 2 or 3 people found us again. You found us again, which is great. So I'm going to be hammering nothing but Manchester United content on this channel. There won't be any reference to other teams apart from in context to Manchester United. It's going to be a Manchester United focus. The other one was pretty much United focused, but we did occasionally cover other Champions League stuff as well. But we're going to be exclusively Manchester United on this one. And yeah, this is part of the rebuild, so hopefully we get there. But no, thank you, Mark. I appreciate that. It's good to see you back in the comments. There's a lot of people I just because there was like 10,000 subscribers. There's lots of people I just had no idea, no idea, no idea. But good to see you back in the chat. So if you got any thoughts, Mark, I was about to wrap up the stream, but if you got like a thought on the midfield situation with Baleba, then let me know what you think, and we'll just go for that one. Say, first midfield signing sets the marker as what we're prepared to pay for other clubs with future signings. It does, doesn't it? The thing that concerns me somewhat is that maybe there's going to be a very big deal from another club for a midfielder that then pushes the price up. Like if we're looking at trying to sign a certain player, like the Cunha signing was perfect because he had the release clause. But what if Manchester City or Liverpool or another club do a really big signing, then you can sometimes see, can't you? I can imagine, what my kind of worst case scenario is going to be. What happens if someone goes crazy and puts in a big deal, and then what happens if then Bournemouth like then get like 65 million for Scott, and what happens if things go crazy, and what happens if then Real Madrid go, look, we want like 90 for Tchouaméni, like he's too good to go for 70 million, then yeah, things could go quite difficult, couldn't they, for a lot of clubs? But I think United, we kind of need to have discipline in this one and go for that one. Uh, cheers, Claus. Who do you want? Are you on the Anderson train? Is that where you're going with that one? So wouldn't mind Baleba or João Gomez as a second midfielder, but we need a Tonali, Anderson, or Madrid midfielder. Yeah. I've kind of just about worked out how to spell too many after typing it about 4 or 5 times. I think too many is going to be he's one where I think with too many that everybody likes too many, saying that you just listed players at the bottom where you pretty much got a bit more experience and a bit more almost like a guaranteed level. So Tonali, Anderson. I think Wharton was up there at one point, but Tonali, Anderson, or Tchouaméni. I think you've listed probably the three big signings that if Manchester United are looking for a statement where people go, damn, Man United are actually serious in this market, that's kind of the one to get. If we saw too many Baleba and Angela Stiller with Casemiro in midfield, we'd be thinking, what is going on? This is like, last season we had Agate and we had Toby Collier. So that would be, don't underestimate that those signings that pick three of them, any of those three, and there would be a complete overhaul of this one. Yeah, Tchouaméni is the so yeah, Tchouaméni's the guy, isn't it? That I keep because there's so many I keep accidentally saying Camavinga instead of Tchouaméni because I'm thinking there's another midfield player that has been like reportedly linked with an exit from Madrid, but there's literally too many, isn't there? Yeah, when I saw too many, I was thinking, yeah, I'm quite happy when when the links are Belieber or the links are Anderson, easy to spell name. It's a bit quicker to type things out, but when it's too many, I have to copy and paste it sometimes and then just like write it out. But no, he's one there that's for links for sure. But I'm gonna have to head off, guys. I would say for people that just joined, like Mark and Tiger Claws as well, I believe is that Alex. And if you're in the Discord, it's just a way of like notifying people when we're live. If you're on the Facebook group, you don't need to follow any like an individual person on Discord. You don't need to follow any individual person on Facebook. It's just an account where just you just click to apply to join, and there's just a group of us there where Cody just posts when we're going to stream. I just post in Discord when we're going to stream, and it's literally like our little community that's like beyond YouTube, where people just know, I just know people just notify where live streams are. And actually, sometimes what I'm doing recently is if I find like highlights video for certain players, I'll post it in there as well. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Cheers, Mark. Appreciate you. And thanks everybody that's watching today. Thanks for the moderators for making the chat a great place as well. Thank also people that are getting involved in the comments and questions, voting as well, clicking the like, and people that share the live stream. It's always helps as well. I think sometimes you don't realize how great that putting comments and opinions, even if you think this player's rubbish or you think this player's world class, whatever player we talk about and whatever kind of scenario we talk about, and the information you give, like with like Yali early on in the stream and Rob and other people and Cody does like I think it makes it a more enjoyable experience for people because it's not just opinions. There's some like factual information regarding like contract length, salary demands, the prize money, the transfer fees, etc. So age of players, loads of great information for people that watch. And if people watching a replay and they've got the live comments to look through, it's also useful information. But I'm going to head off. It's actually quite bright and sunny today, so hopefully the 1 p.m. stream there'll be some breaking news, things to discuss. But until then, have a great rest of your day. And if you just tuned in at the end, then please watch the start if you want to get some different opinions and see what the voting was going. And we will see you guys 1 p.m. today. So catch you guys later. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you then.